Thank you very much. Welcome everyone to our August 20th regular council meeting. We're going to be starting with a zoning amendment meeting prior to then jumping into our regular council meeting. So I will be calling the zoning meeting to order. Ready?
Yep. Be it resolved that this public meeting for zoning amendment now open at 6:30 p.m. moved by Councillor Bourjali, seconded by Deputy Mayor Densham.
All in favor? Motion is carried. I would like to take the opportunity. So Councillor McDonald had to send her regrets. She's tied up presenting today or all weekend, Monday and Tuesday over at the AMO conference, so she won't be able to join us tonight. Moving on to the adoption of the agenda.
Be it resolved that the agenda be approved as presented, moved by Deputy Mayor Densham, seconded by Councillor Bourjali.
Any questions in regards to our agenda? All in favor? Motion community interest? Seeing none, moving on to our presentation in regards to zoning amendment for agricultural use. We'll read the motion and then I'll get Peter to move into this presentation.
That the Council of the Township of North Stormont receives the presentation and background information from the Township Consultant Planner from SDG Counties, Peter Young, regarding changes to the agriculture zone in zoning bylaw 08-2014 for information purposes, moved by Deputy Mayor Densham, seconded by Councillor Bourjali.
Thank you. So we will go for questions once we get the report. So take it away, Mr. Young.
Thank you, Mayor Landry. So this is a public meeting for our agricultural zoning review. It's being held under Section 34 of the Planning Act to gather information and hear from council and the public for any comments and concerns. I'll give an overview of the proposal, and if anyone would like notification, they can contact planning@northstormont.ca. No decisions being made tonight. This is just to present an update for council and the public. So we had a notice on the township website and notice given electronically to the prescribed list of agencies under the Planning Act. We also consulted previously with the Agricultural Committee of the township. There are appeal rights, so if someone did want to appeal the decision, they would have to either speak at the public meeting or before council considered the final bylaw. So if someone has any questions or comments and they're not sure tonight, they can always send planning@northstormont.ca an email or call the office to get more information. So just some background is that we've had requests from several agricultural businesses to review the zoning bylaw to have a bit more flexibility. And that was also the mandate of the Agricultural Committee when that was first established by council. So we took this request to the Agricultural Committee, who supported a review of the permitted uses. The provincial policy statements that the province has, 2020, there's a new one that just released at the conference AMO today, but it's basically that you can have in an agricultural area, agricultural uses, agriculture related, and on-farm diversified uses. They have to be compatible with and not hinder the agricultural community. We also have the official plan that talks about agricultural uses. Some of the larger scale might be an employment district and a business park, but some of the other ones could go on an individual property. So what we've looked at here is, can we look at the bylaw, what it says now, and have a little bit more flexibility, rather every single business having to apply for a rezoning? So in the report, we looked at some new definitions, and that's in the background information attached to the report. We're also proposing to permit some of those processing and on-farm diversified uses and tourism uses, tourism uses, in the agricultural zone without needing to get a zoning amendment. Some of the more intensive uses, we heard from the committee that these could be fairly large, especially if you look at some of the large industrial type agricultural businesses. Maybe those should still need the notice and the rezoning, but some of those smaller scale, the on-farm diversified ones, the ones that just fit right into the existing farm, could potentially be permitted as of right, which is common in other municipalities as well. And they're just to review the exemptions we already have. If the agricultural zone allows something without restrictions, maybe something that has restrictions right now, they don't need that anymore. Maybe it's a bit outdated from an older bylaw. So the next change is looking at on-farm diversified uses. This is something the province is really looking to promote, and I'll give you a few examples in the next slide. So basically looking at what are home occupation, home-based business provisions we already have in the bylaw, and the province allows even more flexibility if it's part of a farming operation. Has to be on a farm, secondary to the main use of farming, has to be limited to area, so it's not going to take up prime farmland. It's maximum 2% lot coverage, maximum 1 hectare, only 20% of the area can be building, so kind of fitting in where your existing farm is, and it has to be compatible with agricultural operations. This is a slide that the province has for the on-farm diversified uses, so you see kind of a cafe or small restaurant, some small retail related to farming, agritourism, sawmills. A lot of these are already found throughout North Stormont, but sometimes they've had to go through that rezoning process. If this was supported by council, some of these businesses could just establish right away as long as they met the criteria in the bylaw. So far, none of the agencies or the province has given any comments or concerns, and at this time we're just here to give council an update and any comments we have from the public. Other than that, that's my presentation.
Perfect. Thank you very much. At this point, I'll take comments or questions from the council. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Lynch.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Peter, and thanks to the Agricultural Committee, Councillor Shane and Councillor McDonald, and the members of the committee for raising this. I think it's really important. I mean, we have a number of businesses. I'm thinking the Field of Gold and the lavender that are kind of extension, lavender farm that's our extension. And I think not having to apply just allows them to move quickly, because a lot of these ideas come on fast and hard, and to remove the bureaucracy is a good thing. The one thing I picked up on, though, in the presentation was maximum of 2%. And my mind went directly to Fields of Gold, who have the sunflower fields and a trail that goes throughout most of their fields at some point in time. And I'm wondering whether or not how a 2% would be measured, and whether in that instance, just using them as an example, would they not qualify or would they qualify? Because some people get pretty creative in their designs, corn mazes, things like that, again, I think we could see those types of things popping up. And I guess two questions. How do you establish a 2%? And my second question would be, even though there's the 2%, would there still be the opportunity for somebody, should they not reach whatever that threshold is, to be able to come in and apply so that they can still make something happen if we think it's the right thing to do?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So through the chair, the 2% guideline is coming from OMAFRA, from the province. That's kind of a standard they look at, but they have different examples, whether they're applying for a small farm versus a large farm, how that 2% kind of fits in, how you could have maybe multiple uses in a larger farm, but maybe only one on a smaller one. 2% is generally the area that's looked at more for the buildings, the parking lot, all that part of it. If it's something like wineries or like an agritourism use where the agricultural is part of the experience, then that would potentially be separate from that 2% of use. Because it's also could be like, let's say for a winery or for agritourism, it's also an agricultural crop that they're doing there as well. So it's mainly intended for the buildings and all the parking lots and all that part of it. However, if someone doesn't quite meet the definitions, there's still an opportunity to apply or apply for a minor variance if they're maybe 3% or something like that, as long as they're meeting the intent. The province has very detailed guidelines that we can use to make sure it's still consistent with those provincial policies.
Great, thank you. I think it's really, really good initiative, so thank you.
Thank you. Any questions on that side? Go ahead.
Just more so a comment on it. Thank you, Peter, and also to our Agricultural Committee. The reduction of this type of red tape, I think, is something that's needed, and the province is looking at doing this across the board, not just in that sector, but in many sectors. I think, if anything, through the pandemic, a lot of things shifted. We saw a lot of these businesses kind of have to reinvent themselves, not to mention the growth of agritourism that we're seeing across our region. So it's nice to see an update to our policies that will match and strive towards the same goals that the provincial policies as well.
Thank you. And with that said, are we looking at other municipalities, say throughout SDNG? Are we all in the same boat looking at these changes and something that's collaboratively done amongst us, or is it just something that our staff identified and we're doing it in North Stormont as a standalone township?
Thank you for the question. And actually, through SDNG, we funded a review, and through provincial funding as well, a review of all the zoning bylaws to promote affordable housing, agritourism, agricultural type related uses in all 6 municipalities. I think in this case, so all the municipalities are in the background working on their overall bylaw updates. But we had requests from the Agricultural Committee to look at the agricultural provisions first. So we'll still be doing an overall update for all those other key priorities, but the agricultural one was identified as a priority to move forward, and that's why that one's coming ahead. But the other municipalities would have similar changes coming forward, but North Stormont might be one of the earlier ones.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Yes, I believe so. Council has a question. So in a public forum, we do allow for questions from the public. So if there's anyone that do have a question, you can stand up, state your name and address. And if there's any comment that you want or question that you would have for Peter, go ahead, Ruby.
I didn't know anything about the study, but I'm just curious to know this 2% that Mr. Denchik raised. How would that apply? And I'm thinking of the Hackford Access Road that goes from concession 1-2 to Highway 43, plus the turbine base. I would almost think that would be over, and I could be wrong, over the 2%. So was that part of it? Did that ever come up? I honestly don't know.
So thank you for the question. So this is separate through a provincial policy than any of the turbines or those type of uses. But in terms of laneways and all those types of other ones, the province has specific guidelines. Whether it's, so example, an existing laneway shared between agricultural uses and on-farm diversified uses are not counted. So if someone wants, they have a farm and they already have, it's a lot of the farms are way further back. That potentially is not included because it's part of the farm regardless. So there are guidelines in here specific that are posted on the agenda as well. And if you're interested, it's page 33. It shows what's in the 2% and what's outside of it.
The only other point is this access road isn't a farm road. It is an access road built by the new turbine company for access to turbine.
So for I guess an example, if someone wanted to reuse an existing, let's say there's a farm that was also using it, maybe they could include that. But if it's just for another purpose, then it's not an on-farm diversified use. It's a separate use altogether, which all those were approved when zoning didn't apply to wind turbines. So it's kind of a separate. This doesn't speak to those turbines altogether because when they were approved, they were exempt from zoning through the Green Energy Act. I don't know if that's answering your question, but.
Yes, thank you.
Any further questions from the member of the public? Seeing none, so thank you very much. So as of now, the resolution we will be brought back forward. So for tonight, we're just accepting the presentation that was brought forward, correct? Yes. So potentially, yeah, just reread it and then we'll get the mover and seconder again.
That the Council of the Township of North Stormont receives the presentation and background information from the Township Consultant Planner from SDG Counties, Peter Young, regarding changes to the agriculture zone in zoning bylaw 08-2014 for information purposes. Moved by Deputy Mayor Densham, second by Councillor Bajelli.
Any further questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion is carried. Moving on. Here, so to the ratification and confirming of our bylaw, number 6.1, Madam Clerk.
Be it resolved that bylaw number 68-2024, being a bylaw to adopt, confirm, and ratify council's actions at its zoning meeting of August 20th, 2024, be read a first, second, and third time, passed, signed, and sealed in open council this 20th day of August 2024. Moved by Councillor Bajelli, seconded by Councillor Shane.
And all in favor? Motion is carried. And moving to adjournment. Oh,
Be it resolved that this public meeting adjourn at 6:45 PM. Moved by Councillor Bajelli, seconded by Councillor Shane.
all in favor? And motion is carried. Thank you very much. If I can get, Nancy, I think for Leanne's gonna get, so I don't know if you can turn that down, or I don't know if you can raise it up so that there's not as much code coming our way. I think it will be a global. Perfect. Thank you. Yeah. So I will call this, the regular council meeting to order. Madam Clerk.
Be it resolved that this regular meeting now open at 6:46 PM. Moved by Councillor Shane, seconded by Deputy Mayor Densham.
Thank you. All in favor? Motion is carried. Moving on to the adoption of the agenda or amended additions or deletions.
Be it resolved that the agenda be approved as presented. Moved by Deputy Mayor Densham, seconded by Councillor Shane.
Any questions or comments on the adoption of the agenda? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion is carried. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest and nature thereof? Seeing none, we will be moving or starting with delegation. I believe we have, sorry,
Through the
if I
chair,
can get Mr. Calder, I think, to make an announcement.
through the chair, thank you, Mayor Landry. I wanted to introduce, or I'm pleased to introduce, the successful candidate for our Director of Public Works and Recreation and Facilities, Mr. Pierre Thibault. Parks, sorry.
Parks, yeah, public.
Sorry about that. Parks, Recreation and Facility.
your chair?
Freudian slip. Sorry about that. It was a very competitive process. Pierre was the successful candidate, as I've indicated. I think, as most of the gallery is aware, and council is certainly aware, Pierre has been a township part-time recreation coordinator for several years. Pierre brings 6 years of professional experience in his role as manager of recreation in a neighboring township. Pierre has been dedicated to the village of Chrysler specifically, and the township volunteer groups broadly, in the volunteer capacity for over 40 years. Pierre's knowledge of and unique understanding of our recreational landscape and the trusting relationships he's already created with our various recreational stakeholders will certainly be an asset in this new role. Pierre will be a fantastic leader to our volunteers and our arena staff, and Pierre's first day was July 22nd. So please welcome Pierre Thibault.
Again, from Council, truly, we welcome you on board to this great team that we have. So moving on to our first delegation, item 4.1, I believe we have Mr. Fleming joining us. I think you're muted. Good evening, Mr. Fleming.
Good evening, Council. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. So I will start with the resolution and then we will move on to the report. So, Madam Clerk.
Be it resolved that council receives the report from the Integrity Commissioner regarding complaints against Councillor Adrian Bajelli for information. And be it resolved that the Integrity Commissioner report dated July 18th, 2024 be made public by posting on the township website. And further be it resolved that council impose a sanction that Councillor Bajelli's remuneration be suspended for a period of 30 days. Moved by Councillor Shane, seconded by Deputy Mayor Densham.
Thank you. So, Mr. Fleming, how did you want to proceed? Would you possibly lead us into the report, and then if council has questions, we will move forward from there?
That seems appropriate, Your Worship. What I typically do with these types of presentations, I give council a very high-level overview of the report. We're not here to debate the findings or the contents of the report. but I am more than happy to take questions from council about the recommended penalty in this case. So with that, your worship, if that is acceptable to council, I'm prepared to proceed with a high-level overview of the report.
I will, so Tony, I will keep, so I might get you to repeat it. I'm just not sure which end is up, but we're getting,
Turn this video off for me.
eh,
Turn this video off.
possibly if you want to turn your, I'm not sure if that would help if you turn your, the video off and just keep the, your mute on, might help, so let's try that.
All right. So what I was indicating, your worship, is that I'm more than happy to provide a overview of the report itself and then take questions from council with respect to the recommendations.
Perfect.
All right.
So
So
you can lead right into it and we will,
thank you, worship, and through you, council has the report in front of it. This is related to an event held on September 30th in 2023, which was the grand opening of the Moose Creek Recreational Hall. Council has the allegations against Councillor Bugelli. I think the critical pieces for council to appreciate are the two sections of the Code of Conduct that were at issue, those being Section 4, sub Roman numeral 1, which requires council members to refrain from conduct that involves verbal abuse or adverse treatment of others, as well as Section 6, which provides that no member of council shall be impaired while performing any duty or carrying out any responsibilities for the township. We were provided with a video recording security camera footage from the event. It was video only with no
so
audio.
Tony, I'll have to interfere.
Certainly.
I'm not sure if there's any,
Can you try to disconnect?
is it,
Sorry, your worship.
so Mr. Fleming, can you hear me?
I can hear you perfectly. I take it council's having trouble hearing me. I'm not sure if you can still hear me, your worship. I can't hear council, nor can I see you. Can you hear me, council? Oh,
We
There we go.
can hear you clearer. It just, you kind of get into your discussions and then it's kind of choppy. So I don't know what, at your end, if it's the signal that's,
I'm not sure, your worship. I can hear you quite
can you hear us
well.
clearly?
I can hear you very well. Can you hear me any better now?
You're breaking in and out, so we can't, is there a possibility that we can try voice off of a telephone? So,
Your worship, do
Tony,
you want me to try and log out and log back in, your worship?
if you haven't tried that, maybe that would be one possibility. If not, we could possibly do it by phone through a voice on video, so that maybe we'll see if it'd be clear enough.
Let
that
me
a
try
try,
to, yeah, let
please.
me try to log out and log back in. I'll be right back.
She said the public can hear him okay, it's just over here. She said the public can hear him okay, like through Zoom.
Okay.
Yeah.
So on the Zoom, he comes clearly on the Zoom, but not here? So I apologize for this. We'll try to get him back and hopefully,
Can you hear me now, Council?
yes, I can. Hopefully this could be better. So let's restart possibly from the start, please.
Sure. So what we are dealing with tonight, Council, is a complaint against Councillor Bugelli. It relates to an event on September 30th, 2023. This was the grand opening of the Moose Creek Recreational Hall. And before I go any further, Your Worship, I just want to make sure that we're still getting clean audio.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So this was a complaint, Your Worship, as Council is aware by looking at the report, that Councillor Bugelli was intoxicated during this event at the Moose Creek Hall and was engaged in 2 separate physical incidents, 2 fights. There are 2 sections of the Code of Conduct that are at issue. Section 6, which says that no member of council shall be impaired while performing any duty or carrying out any responsibility for the township. And Section 4, that requires members of council to refrain from behavior that is verbal abuse or the adverse treatment of others. So in terms of the findings of fact, Your Worship, we were assisted with having security camera footage from the event. We had video only, no audio, but that was sufficient in addition to a number of interviews with people in attendance to come to the findings that we did. And our findings start on the bottom of page 3 of the report. We found as fact, based on our investigation, that the member was intoxicated at the event. We also found that with respect to the first fight that occurred, we could not come to the conclusion that the member was instigating this fight. There was no doubt based on the video that the member was involved in a fight, and that after being shoved to the ground, the member did try to continue the physical altercation after getting up. The second fight, again, we can't say that the member instigated the fight. We can say that the member was speaking with individuals and was thrown to the ground. There was some scuffling on the ground, but this was not a situation where the member attempted to continue the fight afterwards. We understand that the member's ankle was injured during that fall, and so that provided that he couldn't get up at that point. For purposes of the report, it is our finding that there was a contravention of Section 6 of the Code of Conduct. This is the requirement that no member shall be impaired while performing any duty. We found as fact that the member was at the event in an official capacity as a member of council, and therefore that satisfied that requirement in the section that he was performing a duty or carrying out a responsibility for the township and was intoxicated at the time. With respect to Section 4 that talks about the abuse, we find that with respect to the first fight, although the member didn't initiate the fight, there was an attempt to continue the fight by the member after being thrown to the ground. With respect to the second fight, we did not find that the member breached the Code of Conduct in that incident. So with respect then to the findings, there was a breach of Section 6 with respect to intoxication and with respect to Section 4 involving the altercation. And that led us to make a recommendation to council that council impose a 30-day suspension of the member's remuneration. And with that high-level overview, Your Worship, I'm happy to take questions from council.
Thank you very much, and I'm happy to say the audio came in nice and clear, and hopefully we can finalize this comment. So I'll take comments or questions from member of council. Go ahead, Councillor Bajelli.
Thank you. I'd like to begin by expressing my apologies and regret for my role in the unfortunate events that took place last year at the opening of the Moose Creek Recreational Hall. I should have done better and removed myself from the situation, which I failed to do. I am committed to doing better for the residents of North Stormont, our dedicated staff, our wonderful volunteers, and my colleagues on council. My actions that evening were not acceptable. I specifically want to apologize to the Moose Creek Rec volunteers for putting myself in a situation that distracted from the evening celebrations of their hard work. I'd like to thank the OPP for their work in their investigation and their determination that I did not instigate or initiate these events. With that being said, though, I accept my failure in not de-escalating. I should have never put myself in that situation. I'd like to thank the Integrity Commissioner for his work and independent review of the events. I have reviewed his report and accept his recommendations for the suggested sanctions. I've learned from this mistake. For those who know me best, my family, friends, my colleagues, this was a mistake on my part, but was an isolated event. And I will make sure this is not repeated in the future. I hope my colleagues in the community will accept my apologies from last September's events and can see the work that I've done and will continue to do to regain your trust and respect. It starts now by accepting responsibility, accepting the consequences, and doing better. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from other members of council? With that said, I can say a few words, but I would love, so we'll put this to a vote. So the motion was read. Do we need to reread it? Just reread so that way it's clear for everyone.
Be it resolved that council receives the report from the Integrity Commissioner regarding the complaints against Councillor Adrian Bajelli for information. And be it resolved that the Integrity Commissioner report dated July 18th, 2024 be made public by posting on the township website. And further be it resolved that the council impose a sanction that Councillor Bajelli's remuneration be suspended for a period of 30 days. Moved by Councillor Shane, seconded by Deputy Mayor Dencham.
Thank you. So I believe you will refrain from voting, so I will bring the vote forward. So all in favor of the sanctions? Motion is carried. So with that said, as mayor, I wanted to address the community as transparency and accountability are the very foundation of our public office. This council understands its authority as an elected governing body. It is the continued public trust in its individual elected representatives. I believe that council's position on the Integrity Commissioner's report, findings, and recommendation continues to support the public confidence in council. I would like to extend my thanks to Mr. Fleming, our Integrity Commissioner, for his complete and comprehensive investigation on this matter. Council as a whole, would like to apologize to both the Moose Creek Rec Group and also the Chamber of Commerce, as well as all residents of North Stormont for this unfortunate incident. Council's intention was to acknowledge, recognize, and celebrate the community's effort in building this wonderful community rec facility in Moose Creek. As mayor, I believe that we can all learn from this experience, and the situation has been addressed by the council, and as we, the community, we can move forward in a positive manner. Thank you very much. With that said, do you have anything to add on this, Mr. Fleming?
I do not, Your Worship. I thank you, and I hope you have a pleasant meeting for the rest of the meeting.
Thank you very much. Much appreciated. Thank you, council. So we will move on to our second delegation, which we have Mr. Ken Fraser, our to present our draft financial statement. As the motion reads, Madam Clerk.
Be it resolved that Council of the Township of North Stormont receives this presentation and draft financial statements for the Township of North Stormont from the external auditor Welch LLP's partner Ken Fraser. Moved by Deputy Mayor Dencham, seconded by Councillor Shane.
Thank you. the motion is read, so I'll put it to you, Ken, if you don't mind, just go over the reports, and then if we have questions, we'll take it from there.
Anyways, it's good to see you all. Hope you all are keeping well. I'm here tonight to go over the draft financial statement. We'll go over the copy. To read the presentation that follows along. Not sure. Okay. Let's begin. So status of the audit, we've completed the audit. There are only two items left to be cleared for us to release the final version of the financials on our letterhead. One is approval of financial by council resolutions. And second is receipt of the representation letter signed by the CAO and treasurer.
Oh, okay. Is that better? Okay. So once we have those two items cleared, we can release the final version of the financial statements. So pages 2 and 3 of our report is the independent auditor's report. Standard wording in accordance with CPA standard. We do have a qualified audit opinion. It relates to a new PSAP section for asset retirement obligations. They introduced this section basically to calculate an obligation for future retirement costs of long-lived tangible capital assets. The township is still reviewing this section and will likely need the help of a consultant to help determine these costs and estimates. As such, there's no obligation liability reported in these financials for that. And is basically common among all the townships because they're all trying to figure out how to calculate this. Apart from that, it is a clean opinion. So page 4 is a statement of financial position. This lists the financial assets, financial liabilities, non-financial assets, and accumulated surplus for the township as at December 31st, 2023. So at that point in time, financial assets consist of cash, taxes receivable, and accounts receivable. Total $7,877,248 at December 31st, 2023. Financial liabilities consist of accounts payable and accrued liabilities, employee obligations payable, deferred revenue, and municipal debt. Total $7,042,533. So net financial assets, if you're looking at the slides, just the first line less the second line, $834,715 to the positive. Non-financial assets primarily consists of tangible capital assets. So for PSAP purposes, we have to capitalize costs related to anything that has a future benefit, so roads, buildings, equipment, etc. And we amortize it over their useful lives. So the net book value of those amounts included in the total is $37,845,470. There's also inventories and prepaid expenses to come up to the $38,004,301. So the accumulated surplus for the township as at December 31st, 2023 is $38,839.16. Turning to page 5 is a statement of operations. If you're looking at the actual draft statements, you want to be looking at the middle column, which is actual. This statement shows the operating revenues, operating expenditures, and capital revenues and other to give us our annual surplus. So operating revenues for 2023 amounted to $8,433,994. Operating expenditures, $8,374,379 to give us a net operating surplus, $59,615, better than the deficit from the year before. And then we have capital revenues, another $1,898,262. Just to refresh your memories, for PSAP purposes, when the township receives capital grants and donations related to capital projects, we have to report it as revenue there, but it's used to offset costs of the equipment and the buildings. So as a counselor, I'd be more focused on the net operating revenue, which basically shows it as a break even, pretty much.
I'll interrupt and I'll just mention to council, maybe as we move forward, sometimes it's hard to come back and try to identify so we can ask questions as we go.
Yep.
Why would we call it annual surplus? Like, it just seems when you're looking at our annual surplus of almost $2 million.
Yeah.
So maybe explain that.
So basically the annual surplus is made up of the net operating surplus. Okay, so from operations, it's $59,615. For public sector accounting purposes, any grants received from the government for tangible capital assets has to be reported as revenue. So even though it's used to offset the cost of the rec center,
And even if it's spent, it's still
it's spent,
recognized.
it's showed as revenue. The equipment, the building is capitalized and amortized. So for example, if you spent $1 million on a building and received $1 million capital grant, we would show the $1 million capital grant as revenue, like that. The building would get recorded as a capital asset and would be amortized over 40 years. Those are the rules according to PSAB. I know you function more on a cash basis. You received $1 million, you spent $1 million. For reporting purposes, that's why we break out net operating surplus and those revenues. And there's some notes, but I wasn't going to go over them unless you had specific questions for them. I know I went over it fairly quickly. Does council have any questions?
I've got two ways where I can get council to reflect your questions.
Yep.
And also maybe I'll put Kim on the spot here. But also as our newly treasurer, it's kind of a new, but if there's anything also, Kim, that potentially, I know you've probably discussed this as the audit went on.
Yep.
But if there's good advice for us and for our resident, just to kind of state where we are at as far as, and I also, I'll ask now, and then maybe you can kind of, but I like to see comparables with other municipalities. We're all trying to attain the same thing. We offer services to our resident. We have to maintain those services, and maybe you can enlighten us on.
So like I said, I used to be a municipal councillor, so I kind of understand the PSAP statements. I always look at net operating income or deficit. That really tells me how the township is operating. On 8.4 million of revenues, you had approximately 60,000 left over. So I would consider that a good job. Another item I didn't really touch on is reserves. I think we spoke about that last year. There is a difference if we go to note 14 or page 14, note 9, surplus. We have 4.6 million in reserves, but only 1,464,000 is really sitting in cash. Something else I look like, as a municipal councilor, I'd probably look to see maybe bring that up. Whenever you're doing budget processes, you're always looking to take funds from reserve to maybe cover some of your expenditures. Well, if the cash isn't sitting there to do it, you have to collect it from taxes receivable or other receivables. So, always consider a healthy township has a lot of cash sitting for reserve. So that might be something that you want to look
And from experience, what is, like, everybody's got their own, what's your thoughts on a percentage of taxation, what we have as revenues versus what percentage should be sitting in cash on that?
In reserve, I mean, we have some that are, some are below your numbers. We have some that are 50% of the reserves are sitting in cash. Ultimately, it depends on your budget, and in some cases, projects didn't go through, so they put the money to reserves for future. I think the township is healthy. As an accountant, I always like to see more cash, more conservative.
Any questions from council before we move?
I'm still on, so you can continue, it's just not projecting.
Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Dench.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Ken, again, for a great job. My question is on page 13, and I'm looking at the bottom of that principal repayments on municipal debt, and I'm looking at the year over year. It starts around 316, 282, 219, then it jumps up to $1.8 million, and then back down to 100,000, then to 800,000. That number kind of jumped out at me. I'm wondering if you could talk about it.
We base it on the terms of the loans. So if you look at that note, if you look at the last loan, construction loan, 1,661,578. It's basically convertible at a future date into a debenture loan, but it's due August of 2027.
Okay.
So, ultimately, council at some point in time will have to decide, and if they spread it over a longer period, well, that'll change that number.
Okay, that makes sense.
Can you add to that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we just converted those construction loans to final loans with Infrastructure Ontario in 2024, so.
Which is after the fact, is that it, right? Okay. Thank you. Any questions from? You good? Thank you very much. Anything, or CEO called it?
Through the chair, and certainly the treasurer can provide input as she raised this, and perhaps Mr. Fraser can comment as well, but the motion as written should be amended to remove draft and indicate approves the financial statements. So be it resolved that the Council of the Township of North Stormont receives the presentation and approves the financial statements for the Township of North Stormont from the external auditor, Welsh LLP, partner Ken Fraser.
Yeah, that's fine.
So if you could reread that to get the councillors who moved and seconded that, please.
You comfortable rereading it? That's it. Okay.
Be it resolved that the Council of the Township of North Stormont receives this presentation and approves the financial statements for the Township of North Stormont from the external auditor, Welch LLP's partner Ken Fraser. It was moved by Deputy Mayor Densham and seconded by Councillor Shane.
Thank you. You're fine with that? So all in favor as read, motion is carried. Thank you very much, Ken. So as we move forward to item 5. So if we move to item 5, the adoption of minutes of our previous meeting of July 16, 2024.
Be it resolved that the following minutes be approved as presented. Regular meeting, July 16th minutes, moved by Councillor Shane, seconded by Deputy Mayor Densham.
Any questions on our previous minutes? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion's carried. The adoption of minutes from our committees and local boards.
The Council of the Township of North Stormont accepts and approves the following committee minutes as presented. South Nation Conservation Board minutes, May 15th and June 20th, 2024. North Stormont Committee of Adjustment minutes, May 27th and July 4th, 2024 for information purposes. Moved by Deputy Mayor Densham, seconded by Councillor Shane.
Thank you. Any questions? See none, all in favor? Motion's carried. Item 7.1, receive the monthly staff reports and recommendations.
Be it resolved that the following monthly reports be received: economic development, planning, bylaw enforcement, building, fire, recreation and facilities, public works, finance, CAO school renovation project. Moved by Councillor Shane, seconded by Deputy Mayor Dencham.
Thank you. Any questions in regards? Go ahead. Councillor Bridgell.
Actually, just a comment. It was really nice to see our EDO report now being, congratulations for the work that you're doing. It's, we're seeing it on the social media side as well. But I think something we've been longing for as a council, as our strategic plan, and to actually get a report now, it's a nice read.
Okay. Any other questions? Deputy Mayor Dencham.
Yeah, I agree. The list is getting longer, with the rec and facilities and stuff as well. So, but so thank you again for the school renovation project Gantt chart that's in there. That's great. I had a look through it. I guess what it leads to is the next step, which is what's the plan when the work is done? What do we need to do? What milestone do we have to hit before we can start moving in? And is that going to be a multi-day event moving in? Or is that going to just happen all in one day?
Through the chair, we're reviewing the sale of this location to help support the payment for the new location. We did get quotes for an evaluation of this facility. That will be taking place on the 26th, I believe. And both Andre, our CBO, and our treasurer have been supporting me with that. The completion deadline was ambitious. I'm understanding that we're still on target for December 31st. We have not reviewed how we are going to move physically from this location to the new venue, but we will be doing that over the course of the next 2 months once we firm up the finalization date of December 31st. Both myself and the CBO did meet on site with the childcare provider. They were very happy with the progress, and we've had some dialogue regarding our draft agreement that is yet to be signed, but of course will be tabled before council for their final approval. But to answer your question directly, we have not determined how we're going to move physically from this location to the new venue down the street at 57 Copper.
Yeah, so when it becomes available, that'd be great to see, just to kind of know. It's good to visualize yourself in the building, because then you kind of catch different things, but that's great. And it's good news about the daycare as well. I'm really looking forward to seeing that happen.
If I can recommend, I think staff, as we move forward coming into the end of the year, prepping their own offices and stuff to make it an easier move when the time does come. So any other further questions in regard to staff's reports and recommendations? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion is carried. Is Mr. Young still there? So Peter, I'll get you to come up and maybe just give us a brief. So we'll go to item 7.2, resolution, Madam, or the motion, sorry, Madam Clerk.
That the Council of the Township of North Stormont supports the July 24th, 2024 request received from the owner of 17145 Gravel Hill Road to permit lot creation on Sagan Road. Moved by Deputy Mayor Dencham, seconded by Councillor Shane.
Thank you. Just to note, Peter, I know this was tabled, this has come in front of council before. Maybe elaborate from what was and what the difference is coming with this report today.
Certainly. Thank you, Mayor Landry. So as stated in the report, it's to create a new lot on an unopened road allowance. Before submitting the application to ST&G for severance and to the township for zoning, the applicant wanted to make sure that the council would support this. It does require a resolution of council to create new lots on an open road allowance. Originally, the proposal was for kind of a future aggregate, potential passive recreation uses, a few different things like that. At that time, we also had with Public Works concerns about the use and cost sharing of the road. So we had recommended that council turn this down. Since then, the applicants worked with the purchaser to give some more details on the plan. We've also talked through Public Works to GFL, and as you can see in the report, it would support both of those landowners, and the improvements would all be on the unopened road allowance, no cost to the municipality as well. So we're recommending the revised proposal be supported. The landowner is on Zoom if council had any specific questions, but Ultimately, there would still be a rezoning, so there would be a more formal consultation, but we did do informal consultation with the neighbor that didn't have any concerns.
I have a question, but I'll take a question from council, so Councillor Shane.
So I have one question with this. So extending this use of an unopened road allowance, where does the liability fall for that if it's the applicant that's building this road up and using it?
It's on, so this has happened before. The GFL actually paid to extend, I think, and repave the road, if that's correct, Director Henderson. And this is kind of potential additional extension. So both GFL and Malian are currently using the road as well. It is unopened and unmaintained, and I believe it's signed as well, or indicated in the bylaw to that as well.
So on that same note, does that, so there is no the fact that it's unopened, does that remove all liability? And because I know we're often aimed at as being the public unlimited funds. So do we have no liability when it comes to unopened road, and we give them access to it?
I think ultimately anyone can put a lawsuit for anything, but it is being maintained by Malian and GFL, all the constructions by Malian and GFL, and it's signed unopened road allowance, I believe, as well.
And only
Which is all the best practices for a municipality to avoid liability, but it's already been used for this purpose.
And it's utilized by those two for aggregate like removal and not for public. Should not be any public, it doesn't lead to anywhere is my question.
Yes, it keeps on going, I guess, sort of as a dirt road in there, but it's not maintained by the municipality, and I believe it's just them plowing snow for their own quarry trucks, yeah.
Good. Any further questions?
Which is, sorry, that's permitted in the official plan as well, specific for agriculture and for aggregate are the only types of uses that are allowed to do that.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, you kind of covered my questions around liability. That where my head went as well. And does that include thinking about emergency services? Like if there was a fire to some of the equipment there, our emergency services could get there? Or do we review that as part of the process?
I speak to Blake maybe in terms of it's year round, correct? Like they're constantly.
It's basically, I don't think they ever applied for a civic number into that fact. But the road access is accessible by basically tandem trucks, triaxle trucks, and maintained as a reasonable driving surface for a dump truck right into their quarries, or sand pits, I should say. So that might be something we might ask them to look at if it's, do they have a plan, or do they have a emergency plan if something would go on in there, and take the next steps. There's a lot of places that they don't have civic addresses, that they do have operations at it, so that's something to look into.
Good call. Perfect. Any further questions? Seeing none, all in favor of the report. Is this coming back later? I presume it is.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. It would come back as a separate rezoning application, and then through the severance process and Public Works could put conditions such as applying for civic addressing, all those things that were mentioned as well through the severance.
Perfect. Thank you. So all in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you. Moving on to item 7.3, the Otterkirk Municipal Drain.
The Council of the Township of North Stormont receives this report for information purposes and proceeds with the third and final reading of bylaw number 51-2024 to provide amendments to the Otterkirk Municipal Drain pursuant to section 78(1) of the Drainage Act. Moved by Councillor Shane, seconded by Deputy Mayor Densham.
Thank you. So this had already come to come, but we have our drain superintendent. So if Sean, do you want to elaborate just quickly on what's being presented here?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. And through you, basically we received a request for a drain relocation from a landowner. So we've gone through the process of the engineer's report, the meeting to consider and the appeals period. No appeals were received following the public meetings, which brings us to this time where we can pass the third and final reading to enable us to proceed with construction, which would be anticipated to be this fall after harvest.
Perfect, thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion is carried. 7.4, drain abandonment.
That the Council of the Township of North Stormont receives this report for information purposes and proceeds with the passing of a bylaw to abandon the Brabant, Villeneuve, Courier branches of the Mackenzie Municipal Drain under Section 84.5 of the Drainage Act. Moved by Deputy Mayor Dencham, seconded by Councillor Shane.
Thank you. So again, maybe Sean, if I can get you just to give us a brief thing on it.
Sure. In the late 70s, there were 3 small branch drains created. As equipment progressed, it got bigger, and tile drainage took some improvements themselves and would like to undertake some further changes. So the preference for them, the 4 involved landowners, would be to abandon the municipal status of the drain and undertake it themselves privately. So they've all signed a request submitted to the township. We've sent the proper notice back to everyone involved who they were all signing parties to begin with, but no opposition was received, and it said the owners would prefer to undertake this themselves to avoid having to do engineering and go through a similar process what we did for the outer curb.
Thank you. Any questions? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Dencham.
So, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So in this case, the drains only serve the property owners? There's nobody upstream of the drains that utilize that, is that correct?
Correct. There's 3 very small branches with very small watersheds, and only encompassing 4 different landowners, and all those 4 landowners were involved in the request to abandon.
And of course, the other thing, when it comes to tile draining, nothing's permanent, right? If it has to be maintained, or over time it will fail, and if it wasn't properly maintained over time and it were to fail at some point, is there any risk to us at all, or are they basically taking full ownership of?
Assuming abandonment happens tonight, the township has no longer any responsibility for that system, for the 3 systems.
Thank you.
Any questions? So just, that said, so does it just basically remove the municipal? It just becomes where they will do their own drainage to serve their properties?
Correct.
And no longer will you have the authority to go and man it as a municipal drain, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. That being said, any further questions? See none, all in favor? Motion is carried. Moving on to budget 2025 pre-approval for the fire protection grant.
The Council of the Corporation of the Township of North Stormont approves the expenditures of $40,000 contingent on grant approval and pre-approves $20,784 as part of the 2025 budget, funding to be determined. Moved by Councillor Shane, seconded by Deputy Mayor Dencham.
Thank you. Any questions to our fire chief, Steve, or Deputy Mayor Dencham?
Yeah, and we've had discussions about this previously, and thank you for those discussions, because it's complicated, right? The process is complicated, but I want to be clear in terms of what this is we're basically signing up for X amount of dollars, not knowing how much we're going to get for a grant to support, correct?
Correct. And I noticed in my numbers, I just want to make clear that if we apply for the 60,000, for example, and we get 35, we are expecting 8,000 to 10,000 per station, which is 32,000 to 40,000 for the department because we have 4 stations. But with that said, we're hoping for the maximized amount of money, 40,000. We're hoping to get the 60,000 if some departments don't apply, but it doesn't guarantee us the full 40,000. So that 20,000 it might be 22,000 or 21,000. So I just want to make that very clear, that the expectation is 32 to 40,000.
Can you just talk a little bit about the importance of each of the items? Because again, if we need the equipment, then we should be I'm assuming we would have asked for it at budget time, or we were going to ask for it again in the future. I want to be sure that these aren't nice to haves and that these are actually necessary. And also a little bit about the, how the grant gets paid out, because I think it's over years. And so we have to kind of commit to spend over multiple years, correct?
So I'll, through you,
Like you say, it's
Mr. Mayor.
complicated.
Yeah, I know, so through the chair, sorry. So what the government has committed to is 30 million over 3 years, 10 million per year. This year, the grant is strictly for cancer prevention. As most council is aware, the higher risk of cancer amongst firefighters is greater, and the legislation has changed. So this year, the grant is geared for the cancer prevention of firefighters. As we are aware, all our gear and everything, we send them out. By having these extricators, and I was gonna bring that forward for an extricator for next year, for 2 extricators, so that we would have one in one end of the township. So these were coming up in any event for budget consideration next year. The extricators are basically massive cleaning machines that just removes all the carcinogenics out of our gear, and then we can hang them to dry. It just saves us a lot of trouble. We don't afford a second set of gear for our firefighters, so when the gear is out, it can take 2 to 3 weeks before we get them back. No matter how many times we send them out, if everybody sends them out at the same time, although we don't have a lot of fires, but we do have medicals, we do have other calls that warrant our gear being cleaned. With that said, this year, the 10 million is funded for the cancer prevention. The washing machines are the same thing. We have smaller items that we'd like cleaned, like our coveralls that we're starting to use for medicals and our hoods. So those are, most of the stations have their own machines, but we have 2 that don't. So that's the ask for that. That would have come eventually to the council table as well as a budgetary request. The other items are decontamination. So pending, let's say if we had a call or a smaller call or a larger volume, where decontamination of our gear, it's just a solution that you spray on your gear. Again, we use a lot of our own vehicles. We put them in bags, but the risk is there. We want to eliminate that risk. And the soot soap, which is, again, another item, it's actually carbon soap. And we would like to get everybody their own so that we're not sharing, obviously. And if we can wash at the station, bonus. Some stations have showers, some don't. So that's where we're going with the items. Every item that's in there as pretty much to help eliminate that carcinogen off our skins before we go home.
And there's a 10,000, sorry, hopefully I'm not monopolizing here, but there's one called miscellaneous items for 10,000. What's
And that's
inside that?
that's the soaps, that's the soap for the extricator, the laundry soap, I want to call it the laundry soap for lack of a better word. So there's soap for the gear, there's soap for the decon solution. So we have 4 decontamination units, and there's a solution that goes in it. So there's solutions in there. So I added these miscellaneous as an item, and further down, it's itemized as to what they are.
So, and this is for 1 year, correct? The 60,000 is for year 1?
It's for this application, correct. We don't know what year 2 and year 3 will be geared towards. It could be geared towards another topic. It could be geared towards extra. We don't know. Even OFM is not aware. We just found out, I think, a month ago about the cancer prevention.
And our commitment is only for this year. But and so the $60,000, if they came back, I know you're saying that you anticipate 36,000 to 40,000. If they come back and say, well, we're only giving you 8,000, what happens?
Well, that's what we're trying, and that's what we were discussing earlier. There's a guide, and I have a call out to our advisor, our fire marshal advisor, and I want to make clear that if they do give me 8,000, am I committed to that full 60,000? I wouldn't want to be committed to 60,000 if I'm only going to get 8. I'd like to say that if I get 8, can I get anything that within that 8,000? I don't want to overspend for something that I'm not, it's not a BOGO sale here. It's based on what I'm getting. So if I'm getting 8,000, I'd like a confirmation that I will only spend 8,000 and I'm not committed to that full 60.
And obviously, this is an important topic, and I support the concept of it, but how we fund it and how we go about doing this efficiently, that's more where my line of questioning is about. So if that's the case, then if we say yes tonight, are we committed to the 60,000? It sounded like you're still asking questions about the.
It was the only question. I wanted to make sure that we were clear that if we only get 30,000, that I'm not committed. I want to be committed to that full 60, and I want a confirmation that that's the case. And if that would be the case, the problem is that we only have one more council meeting, that this is due September 5th. This is the only council meeting before the due date of the grant. I would have to confirm in another, or call another meeting. I don't know how that would work for that question. Unfortunately, it only dawned on me today that we may, that question might have been posed.
From my perspective, I don't know whether we can do a conditional approval where we say, you know what, as long as you get 30,000 or more, I'm happy. If not, then maybe we bring it back. Is that possible?
I can add to that, so before, I'll go
Okay,
to
yeah.
that
Go ahead,
side
sorry.
first. If there's any questions, and then I will make my comments, you good? So what I'm thinking, Nancy, from what I understand, 32 to 40 is based on how many station there is across Ontario. They're
Correct.
spending 10 million, so we would get the 8, minimum 8, or is the minimum 8
Anticipation
guaranteed?
is minimum 8
anticipated, or-
today, yeah.
So if we get 4 station, we go to 32. If we manage to get a little more, you go to 40. What I'd like to do is stick closer to 40 in the sense that we can still spend 60. We can come to budget and say, you want to get soap, we can still get soap. But by this way, so like the miscellaneous, I'd rather not put it in there.
Okay.
And maybe at budget time say, yeah, I still want to get soap. We can still look at getting it, but this way is we're committing to this, the way it's structured.
Through
So
the
maybe-
chair, if I can interject, and certainly the treasurer can provide more detail, but the motion does indicate quite clearly that it's contingent on the grant.
Contingent on grant.
Yes, but is the grant
But
already been
if-
submitted at 60?
No, I haven't submitted anything, sir.
So if we remove it down to, if we remove the miscellaneous, now the ask is only 50. If we get 40, we're only having to put in
Spend
10
10.
of our tax dollars towards it, correct?
Yes.
Yes, that's correct. Through you, Mr. Mayor, sorry. This was quite a financial exercise in trying to find funding, but it is contingent upon grant approval. This, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Fire Chief, this is to get the approval to move forward with this grant and kind of get pre-approval by council. It's okay, if we get the grant, we're going to spend it. So I think that's kind of where we're at, and deadlines are tight, so that's why this is kind of going forward.
But I'm not disagreeing with the treasurer, but I understand. I think they don't want to commit to the extra miscellaneous items. You want to commit to the $10,000 extra above the 40.
The miscellaneous is if we commit to miscellaneous in the request and we get 32, we still have to come up with the difference. Where if we say 60, we're now committing 20. If we say 50, we only have to commit 10. We can spend 20 if we want as a budget item, but it's not committed to this specific grant structure. Correct, Nancy? Does that make sense?
I'm understanding what you're saying. So basically, the extractor would be an approval, the commercial
The washer and
washers would be
dryer.
approval, which comes down to 42,000. And you're looking at the decontamination units at 8,500, which comes out to about 50,000. You want the miscellaneous items to come at budget and not required to the grant.
Well, which we can still look at because we're not,
Okay. So you're committed to the 10,000 extra if I get the 40? Or if we get, I'm just saying you're committed to the 50?
the discussion on the miscellaneous will come at budget. I'm just saying to give you approval to go and get for the items that were really, the
Okay.
extractor, the washing machine, and,
Decontamination
Yeah.
unit.
does that make sense?
Yeah, we have to massage the motion now, or?
So,
Yes.
so now we're approving 34,800, which is 42. So we're approving $50,500. And if I get 30, or if I get 40, you're gonna pay the balance.
That's correct.
And if I get 35, you'll pay the
If
balance.
council is again agreeing to this, but that's the motion as I would.
I can agree to that.
Through the chair, we do have to amend the motion. Can the treasurer and the fire chief please assist the deputy clerk in trying to massage this motion?
I would
meet
just
our
remove the
expectations.
miscellaneous item off the agenda, just to amend it to
The numbers will be
50,000.
the numbers as type, if
Yeah,
we
it's
just
not-
remove
the
the,
miscellaneous is not on the motion, no, it's just.
Numbers?
Yeah.
Okay.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if we put that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of North Stormont approves expenditures of 50,500, is that the correct number?
I think so, so 34.
Contingent upon grant approval, and that's that?
What about the 20,000?
We can discuss that. Because if the equipment comes forward, we're gonna
So it
need
would be
the.
50,500.
So is council okay with that? So the Council of the Corporation of the Township of North Stormont approves the expenditures of 50,500 contingent on grant approval. Done?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
and just for the record, Nancy, if we get, is there a possibility that we could get above the 10,000 per station? Like
Yes,
depending
that's
on
why I'm
who-
approved, that's why I'm
Yeah.
going for more. If a station doesn't apply, there might be more funding available.
And through the chair, just to give council a bit of comfort, this is very similar to the February 20th motion that council approved for us to apply for the HUE grant. It's actually upcoming, ironically, in this council.
Are you?
Perfect, thank you. So maybe we'll just get, Madam Clerk, if you could reread it, please.
That the Council of the Corporation of the Township of North Stormont approves the expenditures to 50,500 contingent on grant approval. It was moved by Councillor Shane and seconded by Deputy Mayor Denton.
Thank you. Councillor Shane, are you okay with the revised? So all in favor? Motion's carried.
Thank you, council.
Moving on to item 7.6, RFQ for Public Works -006-2024 in regards to our Finch Roxborough boundary road paving.
That the Council of the Township of North Stormont receives report RFQ PW-006-2024 Finch Roxborough Boundary Road Paving and awards the quotation to Blair Asphalt Products. The total cost of the project was $82,731.60. However, for budget purposes, it is recommended to deduct 10% and award the quotation to Blair Asphalt for the amount of $74,458.44 plus HST. Moved by Councillor Shane, seconded by Deputy Mayor Densham.
Thank you. So maybe I'll just get Blake, if you can maybe give us just the area, what we're looking at, and give some context, and then I'll take questions from council.
The area is just north of County Road 9. About 4 years ago, I believe, we had to do a little section because we were traveling with the stopping. The section going further north, it's kind of like a dip through there, and it's been a problem area with potholing and stuff because of the heavy traffic on that road now. And so the 75 is our asphalt overlay budget taken away, which was 100, and the 25 is going towards the Almore Fire Station paving. So this amount, we had a plus minus in there in our tender quotation that we could go plus minus of 10%. So that brings us back within budget with the tender price. So we're going the same as County Road, or no, Section 1112 Farley Road, 7 meters, 60 mil lift. And at some point, at the surface treated road, we're going to have to look at in future of asphalt overlay for to handle the heavy truck and car use on that road.
Before I take questions, so I know we've been in discussions with the counties as far as, and I strongly myself personally believe that there would be more benefit for counties to utilize the boundary. And if you compare it with the 6 that comes off 15 down the 8th or to the 8th and down to, is there any ever, from your experience, Mr. Henderson, is there any ever talks or chances that we could look at this being done?
Yeah, through the mayor, yourself, yes, we're going to have a meeting finalized. Finally, we get a meeting that's going on for 2 or 3 years on rationale of roadways, as in township counties. So I'll be in, it's next, the 22nd. So I'll be going to the counties to review the findings of this report. And like I basically stated that our biggest concern is the winter months with over 1,000 cars a day, 12-hour service with a one shift that we maintain, and hours of service for driving and regulations that I believe the counties, if they even took it over in the wintertime, it would be a big bonus for the municipality for liability wise, and to maintain for that route from 43 back to towards Castleman. So we'll hopefully get good news on the 22nd, whenever the road supers get together and discuss the different municipalities and different roads across SD&G that might be a consideration of swapping roads like they do some places, or winter maintenance or whatever. So it's been ongoing for about 3 years now, and we're going to get some information on the 22nd from the counties who did the study on it. So,
And for council's sake, so County Road 9, roughly what you're looking at would take us, is it gonna take us close to the old dump road? Is that just before the 700 on Rock?
no, it's going to be further south than the dump road. Yeah, yeah.
And what's the intentions as, like, are we gonna have to deal with moving further down up to the
County Road 6, yeah.
Or 6, yeah.
Yes, we're going to have to look as a kind of an asphalt rebuilt overlay. It's like from section 6, 7 going north to County Road 6. It's been double surface treated twice since the last time of 2011. So I believe we can do some patching, like skin lifts on it, and just an overlay of asphalt. That would be our plans going ahead this year, next year. Same as the south end from County Road 9 going to 43. It was done in 2010. Before we let it get too far, it's still in fairly good condition. Before we let it get too far, we should look at an asphalt overlay on it too. But it's the restraints of budget and whatever. It's something we have to look into.
Thank you. Any further questions from council? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion is carried. Looking at the Berwick School renovation funding.
The Council of the Township of North Stormont receives report FIN 2024-18 and approves funding the renovation project through our current line of credit for cash flow purposes, and then formalize a loan through our banking facility. Moved by Deputy Mayor Denton, second by Councillor Shane.
Thank you. Any questions? I believe Deputy Mayor has one.
Yeah, thank you. And it looks like we're trying to strike that balance of interest rates, but flexibility, because if and when we sell the building, we can pay back, et cetera. I can't remember, you may have shared this with me before, but did we look at splitting it into two pieces? So that, Infrastructure Ontario, where we get a good rate, could be part of it that's kind of locked in, and then we just keep half of it kind of more open for payback? Have we looked at that? Is that a possibility?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, I have not looked at that. The only reason being is the cost of borrowing through Infrastructure Ontario right now, it's 4.39 locked in for 20 years. So whatever amount we lock in there, it's going to cost us. I took the full amount, and the annual cost of borrowing is just over $75,000. But that's 20 years. You're locked. You can go to 30 if you want. It's going to cost you a fortune in interest, right? So under the BMO, if we do a secured loan after the line of credit is high, but the hopes are we sell this building and we have to borrow less. If we take an unsecured loan, they can amortize it over 20 years, which is the same as Infrastructure Ontario, but the term is only 5, so we can renegotiate after 5. The cost of borrowing for that is 79, so it's 4,000 more a year. However, if we have a secured loan, which the bank has no problem with, we can amortize it over 25, and our annual payment is 70, so it's less. And that's at current interest rates. So the hopes are interest rates are going to be going down. I really don't want to be locked in another 20-year loan with Infrastructure Ontario at this point because interest rates are coming down.
Your answer? Any questions? Looking at Ken behind you there now. Yeah. Perfect. So this motion was, I'm just thinking, are we doing anything or just giving you direction? Just reread it.
Funding the renovation project through this.
So it's to give you the, for now, to go with a credit line and with BMO. So we're taking out the Ontario infrastructure or altogether the.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. The good thing about, like Infrastructure Ontario are very rigid in when you can take out, so the 1st and the 15th. The bank, I need 3 days' notice, and I take out $200,000 increments. So basically, the loan is not going to be huge. It's going to be more like a progress payment thing. I'm not taking 1.4 out or whatever right away. So the cost during, like for 2024, I had to do some cash flow. I'm looking for cash for, based on borrowing for 2024, 24.5 for BMO. It would be 19,000 for Infrastructure Ontario. Infrastructure Ontario also is very rigid, and their turnaround time, I think they told me, was something like 8 to 10 week turnaround to even get approval. So with the bills coming in now, I don't have 8 to 10 weeks.
And we're in the situation similar to you own a house, you bought a new house, but that house not sold. So we do have this asset here with the additional lot and stuff that will come into play when it's time to finalize our borrowing method. and
Through
stuff.
you,
So
Mr. Mayor, absolutely.
We'll give you more flexibility with BMO. And now are we stuck to BMO when you're writing this, or basically just to go to a financial?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, financial institution. Basically, the BMO is noted because we have a line of credit already set up. I can get money tomorrow.
Okay. Any further questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion's carried. Moving on to our delegated authority bylaw.
That the Council of the Township of North Stormont receives this key information report on delegated authority bylaws for information purposes. Moved by Councillor Shane, seconded by Deputy Mayor Densham.
Perfect. I think we've gone through this enough and it's there. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion's carried. Moving on to some great news that I guess we haven't come out with. We're starting to see the numbers because this has to pass, I think, in front of, we got to get a bylaw, but I'll get Madam Clerk just to read our motion, please.
That the Council of the Township of North Stormont provides support for the Housing Enabling Water System Funds, HEWSF, Moose Creek Water Treatment Expansion Project, and further that the Council of the Township of North Stormont commits to the municipal finance portion of the project in the amount of $1,766,311.99. Moved by Deputy Mayor Densham, seconded by Councillor Vagelli.
Thank you. So what that means is we were successful in applying for a grant, which is the, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, HEWSF fund, but so we got a provincial fund grant of $4.755 million. So that is to go towards our wastewater project in Moose Creek. As many of you are aware, we are not having allocations to move forward with development. This was something that was needed. I don't know, without being successful, it ties up council's hands trying to find funding for that. So I gotta admit that whether Mr. Quinn or whoever at the province, but I would like to thank, and there will be an event that will be brought forward, I believe mid-September.
September 16th, correct.
16th. That will be in collaboration with both ourselves and the province that will make this official. But at the same time, with this being on paper, I guess I'm entitled to give you some of the wonderful news. So with that said, any questions from members of council? So I'll start with Councillor Majella.
Just to comment on this, this was some great news to receive. This expansion is a much needed or integral piece of having Moose Creek be able to grow the additional. And to see us getting this type of funding when it was a highly competitive grant project, where I thought expectations might have been a little low, it was just a great piece of news, and anything that Minister Quinn did for us is much appreciated.
Deputy Mayor Denchik.
Yeah, same thing, and congratulations to staff. I know you worked hard with our grant application consultant to get this done, and again, great news. I know, especially with the work that the mayor's done with the developers, we have developers just itching to get going on projects. We still have to wait till it's put in place, so I think 2027, I heard, is when we can, we're hoping, but anyhow, it's really, really good news. I sent a couple of emails, and so the spirit of my emails on this was just to understand, when you have a big influx of cash like this, you start to ask questions about the ratepayers in terms of how this is going to potentially affect the users going forward, especially because, yes, we got 4.7 million, but we still have a 1.7 million dollar commitment that comes along with it. And so over time, not tonight, but over time, I'd like to try to understand how that will affect the rates, right? Because I think we had had a recommendation a few years ago, last term, where we were given some advice to have a 5.7% increase year over year, just to make sure we had enough money. I know we're going to want to be talking about the potential for development charges. We have our connection fees, et cetera, all these puts and takes. So at some point, I'd love to get a sense as to how this may or may not affect the trajectory of the rates for ratepayers.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm actually for budgeting, because the funding is, there's the way you receive the funds, there's like a lump sum here, and then there's a progress payment here. I'm doing a cash flow analysis because I need to know what to allocate for 2024, 25. And there's also the added bonus that the provincial year runs from April to March, and we run from January to December. So based on what influx is coming in, I'm trying to do some cash flow analysis as to what year is probably going to be the biggest challenge. And I'm also looking at funding sources elsewhere. So it's on the radar. I don't have answers for you yet, but it's on the radar.
And through the chair, if I could just inject, as council has already indicated, this was a highly competitive grant process, and the timelines to submit were very aggressive. I wanted to personally thank a CAO. I was kind of the conductor, but the expertise that I had around the table from our Public Works, Blake Henderson, our finance treasurer, our new treasurer who jumped in with into the deep end, and certainly Aqua and our RV Anderson partners. All of those stakeholders made this happen, and I was very proud to find out that we were actually successful. Thank you.
And I won't go in depth. I know this is just basically to give the sanction of moving forward with the 1.7. I don't know if with the timelines, the master service plan that was prepared by, I don't know where that falls in, if it's something that can be incorporated into that funding versus, or if that was, I think it's time sensitive when we can allocate these expenses.
Yes, we can bill back. I'll have to check to see if that can be part of the costing. I don't want to commit to that just yet through the mayor, but we can certainly look at that.
Thank you. So let's not stop there just quickly, just for staff's sake. So they did work very hard on that same day. So when I did get the call from our NPP to give us this news, I did go in earlier in the morning stating that we got 200,000 for the Finch Rec, which they're revamping a project in where the ball diamond is. So 2 Mondays ago, it was a good day. It's just that it's nice to see where we get this, where we're not dipping in our, we can move on these projects without having to dip. So the wastewater funding would have been very difficult to move forward, and you're not wanting to lose your developers. So this is a given that is letting us the opportunity to move forward with development. So. And, yeah, and that gives some funds for our new rec director to get involved and help us out with taking care of all that. So again, thank you very much. And with that all said, if there's no further questions, are we all in favor? And that motion is carried. Moving on to our municipal bylaws.
Through the chair, the treasurer did want to identify some other.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we also got some news through EDP. We had some funds, and they now have been allocated. They're putting, South Nation's getting 10,000 for some trees. They're getting another 39,000 for, is the Warwick Forest, and 39,000 is being allocated to our fire department reserve. So that was very kind of them.
And is that public or is that just something, it's, hey, so perfect. Perfect, thank you. So item 8.1, moving on to our municipal bylaws. So Madam Clerk.
Be it resolved that bylaw number 51-2024, being a bylaw to provide for updates to the Outakirk Municipal Drain pursuant to section 78 of the Drainage Act, RSO 1990 CD 17, be read a third and final time and passed in open council, signed and sealed this 20th day of August 2024, moved by Councillor Bajelli, seconded by Councillor Shane.
Thank you. Any further questions? It's pretty standard. All in favor? Motion is carried. Bylaw number 69-2024 in regards to the drain abandonment.
Be it resolved that bylaw number 69-2024, being a bylaw to provide for the abandonment of the Brabant, Villeneuve, Courier branches of the Mackenzie Municipal Drain, be read a first and second and third time, passed, signed, and sealed this 20th day of August 2024, moved by Councillor Bajelli, seconded by Deputy Mayor Dencham.
Thank you. Again, it was well presented. Is there any further questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion's carried. Bylaw number 70-2024 in regards to council's remuneration.
Be it resolved that bylaw number 70-2024, being a bylaw to repeal and replace bylaw number 28-2024 in its entirety, to set remuneration and expense allowances for members of the council of the corporation of the township of North Stormont, be read a first, second, and third time, passed, signed, and sealed this 20th day of August 2024, moved by Councillor Shane, seconded by Councillor Bajelli.
Thank you. So we call it council remuneration. I like to just say it's in regards to expenses, but I'll let our treasurer just elaborate.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this one has come and gone a few times this year to get it perfect. There were some changes made to it. Last time it was brought to council for as a draft, and there was some wording that needed to be changed. So the only thing that has changed since it was presented earlier was under section 11, council will be responsible for choosing the most efficient mode of transportation at their discretion for travel to functions and or travel to conferences. The previous wording was very restrictive, so it says efficient, so it means cost-wise, and also if it's going to take you 12 hours to get somewhere versus 2, it might be better to take the 2. The other thing that came up was having to deal with council was giving a per diem rate, which now is not meeting hotel and travel costs to various bigger centers like Toronto, for example. So hotels, motels, lodgings, and mileage, there's going to be, mileage, we have a rate, but receipts are going to be required for that. Conference expenses for meals will be reimbursed up to $200 a day to a maximum of $1,000, accompanied by receipts, which I think I've covered the up to 200, and we've got the receipts. So they're the only 2 changes to this bylaw, and hopefully we can put it to rest. Thank you.
Any questions? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
No, just appreciate the number of iterations we've gone through to get here, and I think it was a good suggestion by Councillor Bajelli to say, don't just give us $200 for a meal and we pocket what we don't spend. I think we're better just to only ask for reimbursement for what we spend. So I think it was, thank you for making the adjustments.
Thank you. So all in favor? Motion is carried. Moving on to bylaw number 71-2024.
Be it resolved that bylaw number 71-2024, being a bylaw to propose propose the authorizing of entering into an agreement between the Corporation of the Township of North Stormont and His Majesty the King and Right of Ontario, as represented by the Minister of Infrastructure for Housing Enabling Water Systems Fund 2024 intake, be read a first, second, and third time, passed, signed, and sealed this 20th day of August 2024. Moved by Deputy Mayor Densham, seconded by Councillor Vigelli.
Thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion is carried. There is no unfinished business or new business. Moving on to correspondence, so item 12.1 to 12.7.
Be it resolved that the correspondence as listed as items 12.1 to 12.7 on the agenda be received. Moved by Councillor Vigelli, seconded by Councillor Shane.
Thank you. Anybody want to bring up anything in regards to our correspondence? I see on here where we do have physician shortage. I think there's something that came through with Mayor Townsdale in Cornwall, and but it might be a venture with the county. So I did have a discussion with the warden, and I think we're gonna use the direction and see where that can lie. And I'm sure as a whole, we can support something, because it is a real need that's needed, not just here, I think everywhere across Ontario. So seeing nobody's got accepting the correspondence, all in favor? Motion is carried. Our scheduling of our next meeting will take place September 10th, 2024 and September 24th, 2024. Moving to our ratification and confirming a bylaw.
Be it resolved that bylaw number 72-2024, being a bylaw to adopt, confirm, and ratify council's actions at its regular meeting of August 20th, 2024, be read a first, second, and third time, passed, signed, and sealed in open council this 20th day of August 2024. Moved by Councillor Vigelli, seconded by Deputy Mayor Densham.
Thank you. All in favor? Motion's carried, and adjournment at 8:12 p.m.
Be it resolved that this regular meeting adjourn at 8:12 p.m. Moved by Councillor Vigelli, seconded by Councillor Shane.
Thank you. All in favor? And motion is carried. I appreciate the people coming, joining us. Ken thought his report. You have a good evening.